Alright, what's up you guys? Today we're going to have a tutorial on how to work with vector in Photoshop. So, for those of you that do not know, Photoshop is a pixel-based program. Now to show you guys what that means, I'm going to go ahead and create a new document, make this transparent for you guys, and I'm going to just take my marquee tool and just drag, Option Delete to fill with black. And now I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in. So now this is 100%, and if you guys look, there's no distortion. It looks pretty crisp. Now this is because we are viewing this as large as it should be viewed. This is 100%, so we are seeing the pixels as if they're actually, taking up their space on this document. So each one of you has a monitor that you're probably viewing this on. Now, you may be viewing this on a phone, a tablet, or a computer. You might be viewing it on your even TV or game system. So, now the average computer right now is usually running a 720p screen, or it's running a 1080. This right here is a 1920 by 1080 screen. So that's basically, if you do 1920 times 1080, you know how many pixels are in your screen. So, basically, this image that you guys are seeing is 1920 by 1080. However, of course, YouTube will scale it down. The one thing that people probably do not know is, for example, maybe you're watching this on a 4K computer. If you put this to full screen with a 4K monitor, you are basically stretching a 720p video to 4K. Now, you will notice that you will have extreme distortion. And I mean really, really extreme. And this is because the pixels are actually not big enough. Now, a good way to illustrate this would be to bring up a picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in this nice little picture of Stantler here. So, now, right now, this is not a smart object. Now it is a smart object. But what I want to do is I want to rasterize this to prove my point here. I'm going to go ahead and size this down inside our little black square right here. I'm going to go to 100% and view this. Now, as you guys can see, there is no distortion with this whatsoever. But as we begin to zoom in, what you start to see is this pixelization. It looks like little squares. Now, pixels are basically squares. And as you zoom into the image, it begins to distort and allows you to see these squares more clearly. So of course, if we go Command 0, this image is clear as day. Now, if I put this down here, and I go ahead and size it back up, you'll notice that there's not too much distortion. Now, most of this is because Photoshop is very good at upsizing photos. However, if we go to 100%, boom, you see the distortion fairly well at 100%. Now, of course, it's not really that bad. I mean, you could work with this if you really had to. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could. But however, if you zoom in anymore, it just begins to get worse and worse and worse and worse until you get to here where you're actually seeing the pixels. So that's something you guys want to go ahead and avoid. Anyway, go ahead and make a new layer here because now we're going to go into the vector. Photoshop is a pixel program. However, we do have some vector tools. Now, of course, there is the alternative where you can work in Illustrator and you can drop anything you may want to use into Photoshop. And that will solve most of your problems. However, of course, you're going to have to convert from CMYK. You might get some different colors and it can be a bit of a pain. However, it is very much possible. Anyway, Photoshop, of course, is pixel-based. However, we do have vector options. Now, what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to go ahead and show these vector options to you. There's, of course, the famous pen tool. Whenever you talk about vector, pen tool is something that always comes up. Now, what people really don't understand is that, like, see, I could do this little shape right here. I'll close that up. Now what I'm going to do is fill the path. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Okay. Perfect. Delete that path. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a little bit in there. So I want to have a little bit of white. So I'm just going to go ahead and make some white in there. Just a little random stuff. So now I'm going to go ahead and scale that up. Now, even though pen tool is a vector tool, you'll see we still have this distortion down here. Now, that reason is because even though pen tool is a vector tool, you did not put it in a vector format. So, for example, I could go ahead with pen tool and make a box. Well, close to a box. Obviously, I'm not going to be exact a box, but you get the point. It's close to a box. I'm going to go ahead and define a custom shape. I'm just going to name this box for tutorial and hit OK. So now if I go down to my custom shape tool, which of course there's other shapes you can use here, and I do recommend checking these out. I'm going to show them a little later in the video. If I go down here to my custom box shape, I'm going to go ahead, select that there, get this, create a new layer, and I'm just going to go ahead and drag. Now, I can do some weird things. Now, obviously, you can see I can warp this a little bit. However, I can hit Shift, and it'll keep proportion. Now, if I make this, what we have here is a vector layer. Now, you're going to know this because you have this right here. Now, if you double-click this, you can change this to any color you want. Any color you can think of, you can change it. Perfectly fine. And you can go ahead, move it around. You can scale up. You can scale down, whatever you want to do. Obviously, that's a little backwards, but you can really do whatever you want. You can scale it all the way up. And even if you go to 100%, you're not going to notice anything. Absolutely nothing. And this is because this is a vector layer. So that's your custom shape tool. That's how that works. Now, there is, of course, other options. You have the rectangle tool. This can, of course, also be used for squares. Can do rounded rectangles. Now, you screw with your radius over here, and you can make things that look kind of like app icons. That might be a tutorial that Josh can show on his crash course. But we're not going to go over any, methods for that right now. We're just teaching the program. However, this is what you would basically do if you wanted to create an app icon, is you would make a rounded rectangle. You could use the ellipse. Of course, you can do that. You can do that. You can make actual circles. I could get my polygon tool and do however many sides you want. I don't believe there's a limit. And of course, as with everything else, it all sizes up. You can distort it. You can hold down your command key and skew it. Go command option, do some weird stuff. You can do control. You can do shift. You could do these. You could do this. You could do some really, really weird skewing. And the best part about it is that you're not going to have absolutely any distortion, and you will retain your vector layer. It's very, very important. When you're working with vector, it's the reason you work with vector is to keep quality in your product. So those of you that may be doing logo design, you're going to be working with vector layers all the time. Now, of course, this is going to be done in Illustrator, and if you would like an Illustrator tutorial, please let me know. I will do one. I might do one next week, but that is only if it gets requested. Anyway, that's pretty much your vector tools. I'm going to go over just a little bit more about the pen tool. Now, if I go ahead over here and I make a path, and then let's say I'm done with that path, so I'm going to go ahead and close that path. Now I'm going to create a new path. Let's see, if I come over here, this is all in the same thing. Now, let's say I get rid of this, it's completely gone. So if you want to make sure to retain your path, just double click here, save it. There you go. So I can make a new path now, separate of that layer. And now you have paths that you can switch between. So the path tab is very useful for working with pen tool. Just something for you guys to keep in mind. Now then, the last tool I'm going to mention is the type tool. So the type tool is, at the end of the day, you are having pixels that you are viewing. So for example, if I just type like, get some randoms in there, set that to black, bring that up. There we go for even stakes. Now if I go ahead and zoom in, you can see though there's still pixels there. Now this is because we are actually working with pixels in this program. However, you can resize this, you can skew it, and as long as it's a type layer, you are going to retain your quality. That's very important, guys. But yeah, type all vector. Basically how you type, the way that this works is when you press a letter on your keyboard, it basically places a vector graphic in place. So if I type A, well, capital A, let's do capital A, it's going to place a capital A vector. Now, of course, you can work with your type tool, and this is a great thing. You can go ahead and stretch this out. Now, one thing that I like about this, once you get it stretched out, is you can just highlight this, center it, and it puts it directly in the middle of the page. So that's really nice. Now, you can, of course, go ahead and scale like that. You could scale over here, of course, to retain the ratio. And you'll notice that once I hit this, go to 100%, there's absolutely no distortion. Now, of course, I don't really recommend doing that, of course. But what I do recommend is that you just click here and set your pixels. So maybe I want to have like 1,000. Nah, 1,000 is probably too big. Okay. Right there. So that's what I want to have. Now if I go back into 100%, perfect. Now of course there's still a little bit of pixelization there. I think that's just a program, but anyway, vector will not distort. So that's one of the reasons you guys should be using it. Alright, so we've gone over pretty much all the vector stuff. I'm very sorry, this is kind of a short tutorial, but of course, it's good to touch on some of these things a little lightly. So next week, I'm going to try and maybe bring you guys an Illustrator tutorial. Maybe I'm going to talk about designing logos and then putting them into Photoshop. Maybe that would be a nice tutorial for you guys. If there's anything else you guys would like to see, do not forget to let me know. Please let me know how I did on the episode, and of course leave your suggestions. Don't forget to subscribe. If there is something you might have missed in the tutorial or you might be confused about, feel free to rewatch it, and if you still have questions, leave them in the comment section below. I go through there all the time, and I'm always answering questions. So thank you for watching, everyone, and have a great day.